Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
And Tane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Good day to everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. And as you know, for those of you that are our regular listeners, I have no idea what episode we're on because we jumbled them up. So we really appreciate you jumping on and coming on with us. Tane can't jump on again today. Sadly, he's had to go to hospital all of a sudden. So we wish him well, and hopefully whatever he's got to do is not going to be anything serious. So I'm going to do a quick monologue. So over the last week, what did I put into my basket of knowledge? Over the last week, I've been considering the phrase of imposter syndrome. You know, it's thrown around quite a bit as imposter syndrome. And I think I mentioned a few podcasts ago that it's something that I'm not very comfortable with. And I've been speaking to a couple of people about the word imposter syndrome. And the word syndrome indicates it's a disease or a clinical condition or something that lasts for a long time. And I tried this out with a couple of my clients and some people that I work with, and I reframed the word as imposter state or imposter timing. And that seemed to resonate a lot more because I don't think people live in imposter state for a very long time. So it's syndrome for a very long time. We go through states, and if we get some advice along the way, things might change for us. But that's my learnings or my thinkings over the next few weeks. Not saying it's correct, but it's something that I'm pondering. Monologue over and done with. It's not about me. And as you know, we invite guests from all around the country and all across the world to jump on and have a chat with us. As you all know, we think everyone is amazing, but as we always say, we have no funding. This is all free, and we'd love to interview you all. But today we are very privileged and very honored to have Shaneel Lal on our podcast. Welcome to Baskets of Knowledge, Shaneel.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Shaneel, for our listeners who don't know anything about you, do you want to give them a little brief outline of who you are as a person at this stage in your life?
Well, I think the most important thing I may have possibly done in my life in recent times is finish a law degree. But otherwise, I am considered an activist. I don't necessarily call myself one, but I'm considered an activist primarily in the area of queer and Indigenous rights. And I was very fortunate to be then later awarded the Young New Zealander of the Year for that work.
Fantastic. You know, and I'm sure we're going to go into all of that in today's conversation. But first of all, let's talk about that law degree. How does that feel getting that done?
Oh gosh, I think I started university in 2020.
Oh, great year. Quite a great year.
Which was the COVID-19 pandemic, right?
Yeah.
So that is the year that we all kind of shifted online. So I don't think I've had a single year of uninterrupted learning. And so that was my first year of university. And I started off as an A+ student, and I thought that I would maintain the grade. But as you go through university, you realize that so much of university is about obedience and not about creating disagreement. So and I just found myself to never be in agreement with the people who were teaching the courses or marking my assessments. And quickly I realized that I wasn't gonna maintain that A+ grade. So slowly over the years, I think my grades deteriorated. But what I kind of realized was that, I just wanted it to be over.
Yeah.
Like university really crushes your soul in a weird sense. It makes you feel unintelligent and possibly brainless at some points. That's what it did for me. So I'm quite glad to be out of it. But truthfully, I'm sitting around and considering if I'm going to go back and do a master's straight off the bat. So
it's like a little drug, isn't it? University. You know, when I started my degree, I was like 3 years, I'm done, over and done with, not touching it again. Then I got into my master's, then I got into my PhD, and I was like, what is going on here? I didn't think I'd be doing this here. So it's really quite crazy how that happens, right? But like you said before, it's interesting how you look at university. It could just be, hey, follow the rules, and this is what you got to do, or you can challenge the status quo. And some lecturers love that, some lecturers don't like that. So I can imagine that would have been a fun time for you in so many different ways.
yeah, no, absolutely. Some will reward you, but some will punish you for it. I However, I think for me, university was always a thing that happened in the background. I don't think university was
Yes.
something that I ever solely focused on. It wasn't that, oh, I've got a university and I'm going to put everything around it. It was actually, I've got my life, which was primarily at the time focusing on getting a ban on conversion therapy. And then university just happened in the background of the movement to ban conversion therapy, which spanned from about 2019 to 2022, which was last year. So university was something that featured in the background. But because I had my roots, really, I started advocating for abandoned conversion therapy before I started university. Um, that is something that I always cared more about. It is also something that I thought actually made a difference. Whereas when you're studying at a university, you don't really see the impact of that. I mean, a lot of people don't see the impact of their education years after they've left university because
Yeah,
it's such a mechanical process. You study, you go into full-time work, and then you eventually die.
yeah. It's crazy. It's this whole social, or this culturescape that we live in, right? The culturescape where you just tick boxes, and it's also worse, not worse. It's sort of stronger in certain cultures as well. So you have a culturescape within a culturescape, and if you don't tick the box, whatever the box is, you are seen as an outsider, or you're seen as, well, what's going on here? Something's not right with you, which is, as we'll go down, that's pretty closed-minded way of thinking, and hopefully the world is changing in that space where you go, actually, hey, wait, no, these boxes can be moved around, and you can do things at your own pace, at your own
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I was talking to my advanced criminal law lecturer, and she said, well, the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court actually had a C degree. So
Yeah,
so what I've gathered is that I've got a short at
there
the
we go.
conversation.
Done. There we go.
What
You
I've
heard it
gathered.
here first. There we go. That's fantastic. And amongst all this here as well, you've also written a book. And when did the idea for your book come into fruition? Because as you said at the start, you have been involved in so many things, and then plus you're studying, plus you're doing everything, and then to write a book is no mean feat. And when did that idea come into your mind? Hey, let me start putting these, documenting my life so far.
Well, actually, I didn't document anything. I didn't have a diary or something analogous. We just finished the movement to ban conversion therapy, and I've always been a writer. I've enjoyed writing far more than anything else I do. So I always knew that I wanted to write. I did not know that I would find myself writing a memoir so early. So the
Yes.
style of writing I did was obviously not something that I'd expected to do or not something that I was skilled at. But the act of writing itself is something I've always wanted to do. So I thought maybe I'll write a book, and I started speaking, having conversations, and I ended up in a conversation with my publishers, Ellen and Unwin. And at the conversation, they asked me about my background, and I started telling them where I came from and what my childhood was like, and how I got involved in the movement to ban conversion therapy, and how we had actually banned conversion therapy as a result. And after that conversation, they came back to me with a book deal for a memoir. And so at 22, in 2022, so I was in my second last year of university, and I thought to myself, well, I wanted to write something analogous to a manifesto. I did not get that book deal, but I got one for a memoir. It's a very rare thing for it's a very rare thing to happen to anyone at 22.
Totally.
And so I just made the choice that, yeah, let's give it a go. And so I wrote for about 6 months. So I got the book deal in early 2022, and then I wrote the book in the final 6 months or less. I think it was about 5 months, final 5 months of 2022, and then we got published in the beginning of the year of 2023.
Beautiful. I've read your book. I think when I met you, I said to you, I've read it a few times. I've read it a few times because there's so much in there that is, one, profound, and number two, just like whoa, but also the style of writing is really easy to relate to, and I really appreciate that. Sometimes you read a memoir and you're like, oh, I don't know, I can't relate to this. So there's it was really easy to read. I've read it in 2 days. I was like, put it down, and I normally would have the book here with me, but I've actually lent it to I've lent it to Mia. Shout out to Mia. She saw it on my bookshelf, and she's like, hey, I want to read the book there. So
Fantastic.
Yeah, so she's got it now at the moment. So I like it because it's easy to read. It's not a it's when I say easy, it's not a book where you go, oh, what's going on here? You go, wait a minute, I can understand it's emotive, which is I guess I don't know whether
Oh,
that was
yeah.
intentional or whether that was
No, no, it definitely was. Because if you think about it, in my book, I write about the fact that I hadn't learned English till I was about
yes,
7 or 8 years old. So if I started using the book had to be true to me, right?
yes,
And I had to write. It's no way that I spoke, and if I had to be absolutely true to myself, I wouldn't be writing the book in English at all. Um, so I had to write in English, but I had to write it in a way that was accessible to the people that I was trying to communicate to, which is usually younger people or people that come from non-white, non-native English-speaking communities. So those were really my main target audiences, and then everyone else. If I was able to deliver my messages to those communities, everyone else would have just easily been captured, right? Because
100%.
yeah, so I wrote. I mean, I had the option of going with a ghostwriter. And a ghostwriter is usually someone you sit down with, tell your story to, and then they write the book for you.
Yeah,
And most people have ghostwriters. So when you open someone's book, it will say their name with and then the ghostwriter's name.
yeah,
I didn't want a ghostwriter for multiple reasons. One, I think it would have been very difficult for someone who's born in New Zealand, and has written in New Zealand to then get their head around the way that I communicate. Two, it would just be impossible for me to convince people of the things that happened in my life and then have them narrated in that exact way. What would have easily happen is that I would have held back, and then the person who was narrating on behalf of me would have watered down the content
yes.
as well. But there were multiple reasons, but I think the primary reason could have been because I wanted to communicate in a way that I knew that the communities that I was trying to engage with would understand.
And I think that's really I mean, there's no doubt that's come across really, really, really well. Like I said, I read it probably 4 or 5 times in a span of whatever 6 months that I've had it. And for our listeners out there that want to know what the book is, it's called One of Them. Fantastic book. I really recommend it. Um, let's talk about let's talk about conversion therapy. I'm not going to go into
Yeah.
well. Let's talk about that actually. You were born in Fiji, and Fiji. Everyone thinks it's an idyllic, beautiful place, which it is, idyllic, beautiful place. But like every place in the world, there's no such thing as perfection. I grew up in Zimbabwe. Um, Out externally beautiful, internally it's all got its own problems, right? Um, and as a young person growing up in Fiji, your story documents that, which is really beautiful. At what stage did you realize that, hey, conversion therapy is a no-no? This is ridiculous. Because the reason is in our lives we'll have our norms. We think this is
Yeah.
norms until we realize actually this is not normal. When did that moment happen for you? And I know in the book, but for listeners who don't know what that is, we're just going to talk
Yeah.
about that.
Well, no, just in Fiji, Fiji's a political chaos. If you think about it, we haven't had a properly democratically elect. We didn't have a properly democratically elected government till last year, the
Which
year
is
before.
crazy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think about it, Fiji is a small country. It's had four coups. Um, and I was born, of course, 4 months before Fiji's third coup, which happened to be Fiji's ethnic coup. And
Yes.
essentially, what it was that in 1999, a Indo-Fijian man had become prime minister, and a small group of nationalists were like, "We're not going to have this." So they walk into parliament with guns and take the Indo-Fijians hostage. And then when I was about 6 years old, Fiji had its fourth coup. They just kept overthrowing the government, and it was ridiculous because it debilitated the country's economy. I mean,
Yes.
countries like New Zealand punished Fiji for having an internal coup. So, and then after the governments came into power after the coup, New Zealand embraced them. So it was absolutely ridiculous that New Zealand was punishing Fiji for having a coup, but then later embracing the person who had become the prime minister as a result of the coup. Yeah, so there's that. But I think with conversion therapy, when I knew it was a no-no, I think you always kind of know because it is so inherently at opposition with who you are. I think everyone knows who they are. They
Yes.
know if you don't know the exact you may not have the exact vocabulary to describe who you are, because you may not just simply may not know the words, or just simply may not have seen someone else who's like you. But you're different because those feelings come naturally to you. You
Yes.
may not have the language to express those feelings, but those feelings you understand them. So I always kind of knew I was slightly different.
In quotation marks.
Yeah, yeah. Well, different.
Yes.
Well, no, different. Quite literally different, right? But
Yeah.
different isn't a
Yeah.
bad
Yeah. When I say that, because because our norm is our norm, right? So when we're living our norm, we don't actually know that we're different. We just, hey, this is norm, but then society makes us feel
thing.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Different from relative to others.
That's right.
Others are different relative to me. So
100%. Yes. Yeah.
no one really is the norm. Some are just more common.
That's right. Yes. Very true.
Some common things are not very normal.
That's very, very true. I love that. Yeah. So that was you growing up as a young person, and then you moved to New Zealand, and Otahuhu College was a big shock for you because you thought you'd come into a progressive country.
Well, not necessarily Otahuhu College, because I'd moved from a island that was dominated by Pacific people
Yes.
to a college in a suburb that was dominated by Pacific people.
Yes.
Really wasn't a cultural shock. I wasn't shocked that it was dominated by Pacific people, nor was I shocked that it was dominated by conservatives, because it was just a Pacific community, similar to what I had grown up in.
Got you. Yeah.
What shocked me was that, in places like Millmore Hospital, when I was volunteering there, there were people who were still offering conversion therapy, not employees of the hospital, but people who were just loitering. Uh, that was quite concerning. Is that okay? Hospitals, which is seen as a place of medical practice, a place of professionalism, a place of science, we're still having people loitering this space, trying to offer pseudoscientific practices. So that was a shock. And then the biggest shock was then going to university and realizing that it was all dominated by white people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I found the same thing when I moved to New Zealand as well. Coming from Af Africa is an interesting place. A lot of people think Africa is just full of Black Africans, but it's a very diverse community of Indians, the whole lot, the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
And when I moved to New Zealand, I was like, whoa, this is a very interesting place. Given that, as you said before, people are very vocal about racism externally, but internally it's a whole different story. But wait a minute, this is very interesting. So, and I read that the passage that really started for me was when you were at Middlemore Hospital, and a Christian church, or sorry, a Christian leader came and said, "Hey, we're going to pray for you." That must have been just out of the. You're like, "Whoa, I'm just trying to I'm helping here. What is going on here?"
Well, I probably would have cursed at him.
Yeah.
I was not at a hospital where there were other people. If I were not
Yes.
volunteering for my high school, I would have probably cursed him out.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
have no problems with cursing people out. I think
Yeah.
people should probably swear more. We'd be less angry if we just swore more.
Yeah. Just let it out, right? Just let it out.
So yeah, so he was offering conversion therapy, and I think that's the moment when I realized that it was actually, well, I didn't realize it was legal in that moment. I then went off and I was like, okay, let me Google what this thing is, and found that it was conversion therapy, and then tried to look for laws that were prohibiting this practice, and there were none. And then I started finding out that there were people who wanted it banned. There were little conversations that were happening, but nothing quite dramatic, nothing quite radical had changed. And then I just it was almost as though the time aligned for me. I mean, it was almost as though I was meant to lead this movement. Like 2018, I realized that conversion therapy is legal. 2018, at the end of the year, I become a youth MP. 2019, I go to youth parliament and give my speech to ban conversion therapy. 2020, Labour wins a landslide election after promising to ban conversion therapy. 2021, we introduced the bill. 2022, we ban it. It was just hit the ground running, and a very successful campaign over five-ish years.
That's right. But you weren't the first to start this. As you said before, it's been spoken about
Yeah,
before. It's been promised, but nothing's happened. Empty promises
yeah.
have happened.
Well, there
And
were conversations, definitely
yeah,
conversations, which is how I realized that actually people are talking about it. It's just nothing is. It's a stalled. It was a stalled movement. The movement had started, but it had just stalled, and there just weren't anyone. There just weren't enough people with large profiles behind it. There were people doing stuff. It was simply that they were not getting the attention.
and how old were you at that time, Shaneel?
God, I was 18. I was born in 2000, so
Yeah, nice and easy. Yeah, in terms of timing. So, as an 18-year-old, did you? I mean, what made you? As you said just before, there was no one with big profiles doing it. Why did you go? Hey, I'm going to take this. I'm going to with obviously your people with you.
Young
Or
people.
was that a is that a big statement like I'm going to take this as opposed to hey I actually work to move this forward?
Oh no, I think as young people, you kind of think you're invincible, and perhaps we are, because we're not so tired from the world. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like I'm going insane with the state of the world, and every day you kind of feel like you're more and more and more helpless. But I think when you're young and you haven't been conditioned with all of the realities of the world, of how cowardly some of our leaders can be, how little action for good people want to take when they're in positions of power. When you're young and you do not understand those things, you just go hard. And I think that was possibly our advantage, is that we had a campaign that was primarily run by young people who were still energetic, who were still hopeful, who were still, saying that no matter what we come up against, we're going to charge forward anyway. And I think that's how we ran most of our campaign, is that, and most of it just felt like we were fighting a losing battle. But really, the turning point was in 2020 when Jacinda Ardern's Labour Party won that landslide election, and we just knew that that was our time to get it done. If we didn't get it done then, we wouldn't have ever
yeah,
gotten it done.
yeah. And I
Not
guess
incoming government.
no, totally. And I like what you said because a few weeks ago we had Lola Fish on the podcast. Lola is 15 years old, and she said to me at the age of 15, if we're not going to do it, no one's going to do it. And she started her own magazine with young people,
Yes,
which is
I know Lola.
amazing. Yeah, which is fantastic, you know. And she had your name down as well. And what I liked about what both you and Lola have said is that as a young person, you just go. You know, you have the drive, you have the you're like,
Yeah.
hey, what's going to stop us? You know, what's going to stop us? And if things stop you, just find another way around. Whereas as you get older, you think more about all the things that can stop you versus what can't stop you, which is
Yeah. I mean, I think also the practical real life effect is that as you get older, there are more consequences.
yes,
You can get fired.
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
That's possibly the main thing that's stopping people from doing absolutely anything, is that we are run by capitalists
yeah,
who do not like being challenged. So they say to you, if you challenge the status quo, which benefits people like me, then I'm just going to fire you. And
yeah.
that's really, I think, the biggest thing that's stopping most workers and most poor folk from coming together and overthrowing the status quo, because they cannot simply, in the immediate, lose their job for the greater good in the long run.
Totally. Yep. It comes down to personal consequences, which are real. You know, I've got to feed my family. I've
Yeah,
got to put a roof
yeah,
over my head,
yes,
which
yeah.
is real. Yeah,
Can't pay the mortgage, you lose your house.
that's it. Yep. And that's it. And the impact is really, really massive. So we're lucky we have young people like yourself that are out there doing stuff, which is really cool.
And houses to lose, because
Yeah, not yet, exactly, not yet.
possibly never.
Oh, that's a whole different ball game, isn't it? So crazy. Uh, your speech, which is really it's people know about it. It's pretty viral.
But which one are we talking about?
Your band conversion therapy
Oh
speech.
yeah,
Yeah,
youth pilot.
the youth parliament one. Um, when you gave that speech, what is that? I mean, you come across as very confident, and in your book you go, "I was crazy nervous." But as
Mm.
you stood up there and you spoke to these people, when you watch it, you just see the fire coming through. But before all that happened, then what are you feeling like when you were going up and speaking about this to older people?
I wasn't speaking to older people about this, I think.
Yep,
um, I don't think we were speaking directly to many people at all, because it was such a new conversation, right? I remember that only about five countries in the entire world had started even banning conversion therapy to some extent. So it wasn't as though we came into this movement as a late comer.
got you. Yep, yes,
We were very quick to get the ball rolling. So other countries were actually looking at us and thinking, okay, what are they doing, and how are we going to follow? But we didn't have that. We did not have the luxury of saying, well, look at that other country; they've done it quite well. So a lot of the times we were making things up as we went,
Yeah.
and we just had to pretend we were very confident about it. But we got lucky because as we started the movement to ban conversion therapy, a lot of medical bodies in New Zealand, most psychologist organizations, most medical bodies, just openly said, yeah, conversion therapy does not work. We do not support it. Ban it. And so we got quite lucky is that our medical professional bodies were quite sane, uh, and did
I
not
love that
support.
word. Yeah. And I guess it helps, you when you have people that back you that have credentials up behind their name, and you like you said, high profile. Once you have that things people start listening.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
which is
definitely.
which is what you need, right? You just need that people to listen. And once you have one person listening, then it just starts snowballing, snowballing.
Yeah.
And in your book, you document about the moment you heard it all went through. Can you remember that moment, and can you share with our listeners how you felt when therapy was banned?
Of course, it was a relief.
Yeah, yeah,
It was,
yeah,
well, it was a relief at first because we'd done it, right. It was 5 years. It almost felt like it was never going to come to an end. But when it happened, we all just kind of sighed relief. So that moment was really just a relief, and I don't think it was much. There wasn't much of a break between between banning conversion therapy and my phone ringing, because immediately all
right
the
away. Yeah,
it was like, okay, now really we're not going to breathe. So so we banned conversion therapy. Probably had like 5 minutes before we started getting calls.
yeah,
Started getting calls, and then we started responding to them. The One News was outside our house, waiting to interview us for the late night show. And so really didn't really get much time to process it. But then we
yes,
did sit around for a long time, just kind of going, yeah, everyone's a bit tired. Everyone's a bit tired, and it's
yeah,
finally um, can take our foot off the accelerator. But equally, the next few months were just very depressing because teenage years is usually when you develop your identity, and instead of developing an independent identity for myself, I kind of wrapped my identity around the movement to ban conversion therapy. So when the movement came to an end, so did my identity that had been created around this movement. So now I was at what, 22, 20, 22, yeah, 22, trying to figure out what my purpose was, or if I just kind of burnt out. It was
yeah,
almost as though I at one point felt relegated to irrelevance.
yeah. And that's pretty challenging, right? And I think we find that with a lot of people when they marry their identity and that's taken away, not taken away, or it changes. You go, actually, who am I? What am I? What's going on here? But what I want to ask you is, what is it like for you from not being in the limelight to all of a sudden now being in the limelight? I mean, it was progressive, but then it just shifted overnight, where it just changed, where now Shaneel Lal is the face of the movement, and that's got its pros and its cons, and it's got its advantages, disadvantages. What is it like for you as a young person
Well,
navigating?
truth be told, I don't think I was that well known in the movement to ban conversion therapy, right? People knew that I was leading the movement to ban conversion therapy, but I really wasn't popular at all. It was, niche communities. If you were
Yes,
really into activism, if you were really into news, if you really were into politics, then people would know you. I think what really exploded my reputation, or what really exploded my image, was the recent protests against Posey Parker. I think the
yes,
entire country just kind of were like, now we know this person.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what
Oh
really
wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I didn't think of it that way, because I mean
my.
yeah,
Well, it's
and
I don't think if you were into politics, you would know me through the movement to ban conversion therapy, and that's why people, I think, those who do respect me because of, and so the newer audience that I have is
yes.
from the protests that we did against Posey Parker when she came to Auckland.
It's so interesting, because and didn't think about that, because when you follow somebody, but you anybody's work, you can everybody's following this work here, but actually that's not true, right? It's again, it's a blind spot that we have in our life, that we go, actually, wait a minute, just because I'm following somebody or listening to somebody doesn't mean everyone else is, and that's why things change or don't change. Um,
Yes, yes.
Yeah, which is yeah. Thank you for that there, because I mean I assumed that, and good reminder for me, actually, wait a minute, everyone's got blind spots, and all different spots, which is interesting. And that's life, right? That's human nature. That's human
Yeah.
nature. Um, and then amongst all that's happening as well, you now get nominated for Young New Zealand of the Year. What is that like for you, amongst everything that's happening in your life? You get
Perhaps the
another.
most anxious person to ever be
Yeah,
awarded thing at those. Though I mean, there were petitions to have me removed. There were
yes,
petitions to have me removed. There were threats that people would come and cause violence to the awards office. They basically the awards office had received so many threats that they had to get extra security.
yeah,
And on the night I entered the venue, hours, we're talking 5, 6 hours before anyone else had arrived, so that I could get in safely. And then I did not leave the venue that night because it was too unsafe for me to do so. And then throughout the night, we had security, extra security, we had police presence. These things have, never been done for any other person who's been nominated.
nominated. Yes,
Yeah, and in my head, it was that if I didn't win, people would say, haha, shame on you, you didn't win. If I did win, people would go, you didn't deserve to win. You should be stripped of your award. So there was really no, in my head at least, on that night, there was really no way for me to truly win, because either way, someone or a large group of people would have been upset. Um, I do show up and I win. And then I tweet about it. And suddenly there's 8,000 replies to my tweet.
oh wow,
And I just thought, what is happening? It was just purely chaotic. And then right-wing conservative racists, really, there's no other way
yes,
to put it, right-wing conservative racists and transphobes just started a massive campaign to have me stripped off my award. Obviously didn't get stripped off my award, and really no one would have dared to.
yeah.
So that was again another moment that perhaps exposed the really bigoted underbelly of our country. But I found it also really fascinating that a lot of the hatred that I was receiving wasn't from New Zealanders. It was people who were based in Australia and the
Oh
UK.
wow. Oh wow, that's so interesting, isn't it? And I guess this is what happens with the globally connected world. People, the fear and anger can now be chucked out everybody from anywhere.
Yeah.
Um,
And
which
the way that I knew it was people from the UK is because they're obviously asleep when we are awake. So I posted something and you get like a wave of great support.
yes,
And like exactly when the people in the UK are waking up, you
you
kind
can
of just
just
and then you go on the account and there's like, oh, based in London, based in Edinburgh. It was just hilarious.
it's yeah, humans actually, and the world of the internet, Twitter, social media has just changed the whole dynamic on not just on the culturescape of the world, but on how people's opinions and facts become reality, or people are not afraid to say whatever they want, and it becomes a fact versus an opinion. And I'm
Well,
guessing you
yeah,
must.
yeah. In recent times, what we've seen is that someone can make any claim on Twitter, and then it gets cited by a news media, right?
Yes.
A
Yeah.
news media, and then that news media will later retract that statement and apologize for it, but the damage has already been
It's too
done,
late. Yep.
and that
Yeah.
retraction is seen by no one.
That's right. Exactly. That is right.
I mean, we're kind of seeing that happen right now.
Yeah, it's really entertaining I to be honest, I've stopped watching the media at the moment because I just that's a personal thing. But it's really interesting when a source is X or Twitter or a Instagram post, and you go, wait a minute, how is that a source of any validity? But it runs the story. As
I
you
mean,
said, runs the
unless it's
story.
for someone's like personal experience, right? Someone saying, "Oh,
Yes,
this happened to me."
100%.
That's very different to saying, as a matter of fact, this has happened here.
Yeah, that's so different, so different. Yeah, which is crazy, and what I really what I really love about this is because you've been really honest that, hey, everyone thinks about the glitz and the glamour of these awards here, but actually, as a young person, that wasn't glitz and glamour for you. The glitz and glamour was
Oh,
outside, but internally it was a different story altogether.
yeah, I mean, you get a title, of course, right? But
Yes,
it's not only in that moment that it's so contested that people get so upset about you. I mean, here's the thing: I was the first trans person to ever win any award in about more than a decade. For that award has been running for a decade,
Yeah,
and there have been so many winners. And I was the first trans person to win, and it's like bloody 2023, so it took so long. But equally, once you get the title, suddenly everyone believes that you are some form of expert on next to everything. Something will go down, something horrible will happen in the country, and people will go, well, you are the Young New Zealander of the Year, you should say something about this. It's like, well, hello, I have absolutely no idea how like a petroleum company works, or it's
yeah,
just they expect you to say something. But also, this happened to me before I was even given the title. People almost have this weird expectation. If you are a marginalized person with a platform, you are expected to speak up for everyone's plight.
yeah. I love this because we had Kendall on here. Kendall was the Young New Zealander of the Year a few years ago, and she said the same thing. She goes, "I won this award for creating a financial literacy app, and just because I'm Maori, I now have to speak at all these things, which I have no idea. I have no idea, but I'm now becoming a token face for all these because I've got this title. But my title is for this specific thing. But nobody asked me about that. They when I try and talk about that specific thing, it was like, oh no, don't worry about that. Talk about what we want you to talk about, which is
No, no, of course, I was awarded for leading the movement to ban conversion therapy, but I mean, so much of the conversation since me winning the award has been about, can't transgender women pee in women's toilets? It's like, well, none of that had,
anything to do. Yeah,
that's not why I
that's right.
won this award. Obviously, you'll have those
Yeah,
conversations, but that has nothing to do with me winning the
yeah,
award. Most of the conversation following me winning the award were focused on like, can transgender women pee in women's toilets? And I was like, well, why is that tied
yeah.
to my award?
That's right. It's yeah, but humans are humans, and storytelling and telling a story
Well, like
is really interesting.
uh, some humans
Yeah,
have words that we cannot say on this podcast.
that's very true. That's very true. But also, when you spoke at the one, you spoke about how your life was threatened as well. So, in terms of, we all see an outward face, but actually humans are terrible. And, you spoke about how your house was broken into and or thrown, things were thrown, and that's I mean that's terrible. And what is how do you feel about that? As you, I mean, when you see one side of the world think, hey, this is amazing, and then there's people that are actually trying to um, threaten you in a harmful way for
I
nothing you've
think
done wrong.
I think the biggest reason we're seeing such a resistance from the conservative world or from the status quo is because they know they're falling apart. What I usually say is that the waves are turning, and that the conservatives know that once the waves turn, there's absolutely no way they're going to stay afloat. This will drown them out. So they're throwing absolutely everything they can in hopes that something will stick. I mean, just as you get taken out, you'll give it everything, right? And this
Yes,
is, this is them giving it everything. Uh, I know that hoping that racists will just die one day is not the solution, but I do think that the ratio of progressives to racist is definitely now in the favor of
shifting. Yeah,
progressives. Yeah.
yeah,
I think surely there's a generational thing, but I think we also need to be careful because hatred is taught, you know,
yes,
and there are very many young people that are being taught hatred. I'll give you an example. A group of teenagers attacked 9 gay men in Christchurch in a span of 6 weeks in hate crimes in 2023, right? And you think about where do these teenagers get the idea? It's obviously not innate. It's not something that they were born with. They've clearly been taught to hate gay men. And if nothing's done about those teenagers, if they're not taught that what they've done is wrong, they will teach it to their kids.
100%.
And then it's just you have to wait for those. Some people will never change their minds off, and they'll just have to die off.
Yes,
But there are some people that are young, and those are people that you can actually educate and change their minds off. And if we don't do it when they're young, they will end up becoming one of those people that you simply have to wait.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it reminds me of a video that I watched yesterday. It was really beautiful. You might have seen it, Shaneel. It's they had this advert of two young. It's a show where they had two young people, I think maybe 7 or 8 years old, and they were very different. So two young boys, one say one was African, one was Pakeha. They had a male and a female. They had the whole thing, and they
Yeah.
just said to them, "What is different between the two of you?" Now, there's obvious physical differences between them, but not a single one mentioned that. Not a
Uh,
single one of them mentioned that there. So it goes back to what I said before. Those differences are taught. Those physical differences are taught to us by
yeah.
society slash our family, really.
Yeah, it reminds me also of a photo that a parent shared very early on in the 2000s. It was a young black boy and a young white boy, and they thought they looked identical because they had the same haircut.
Yeah, it's
Like
isn't
a
that, isn't that beautiful? Yeah,
yeah, it's always like, these kids are taught hatred. They
yeah,
clearly learning it from their teachers, their guardians, their parents.
yes, yeah. Which is society and that whole culture scape we spoke about before, where you have to, or hey, I'm afraid of change, therefore I shall embrace this certain way of thinking. Um, yeah, it's I think back to my dad who grew up in basically apartheid Zimbabwe and segregated based on color, and I really struggle to think how that was because that's not my world, but for them it was the world they lived in. And but generationally, when I tell someone, hey, I'm from Zimbabwe, they'll say to me, oh, you mean Rhodesia? And I'm like, no, I'm in Zimbabwe. And because Rhodesia is the racist state. Zimbabwe is like, oh no, independent, no, can't talk about that. So it's, like you said, but they'll die down, they'll die away, and they'll disappear. And hopefully the world Rhodesia will disappear as well with that there. But if not, it's because they've been taught by mum, dad, grandpa going on, which is hey, the world of the nature of the world. So Shaneel, you've now finished your law degree.
Well, yeah,
You
fingers
are
crossed.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with that there. Um, what's next for you apart from maybe a good sleep? I guess. What do you? I mean, I know you're very active within the political scene. You speak about what's happening in the Middle East, and we're not going to go into that because that opens a whole different can of worms. And but I'd love to if you would love to talk about that there. But what's next for Chanel as life changes a little bit for you?
Oh God, I do not know as a matter of certainty. I've obviously written my book, and I'm doing book festivals. I have done one in Christchurch. I'm doing one in Wellington very soon, and I hopefully will be doing Auckland Writers Festival if I get the invitation. And if I don't know what the curator is doing.
Yeah.
But after I finish my law degree, I don't believe I'm going to go right into practice. I would like to do a thesis, master's purely research, and investigate whether the criminalization of homosexuality was a breach of the Treaty of Waitangi, um, and perhaps help a group of Maori take the claim to the Waitangi Tribunal and seek some form of settlement for the criminalization of homosexuality, particularly for Maori.
Yes.
That is something that I'm keenly interested in doing. I'm very keen to do that. Equally, might just mess around and run for mayor.
Hey, the way the world is going at the moment, you could, yeah, why not?
Might just
You
mess
know?
around and run for Auckland's mayor, just
Yeah.
why not? I mean, if Wayne Brown can do it, I
Yeah,
think
totally.
really any living thing could do it.
Yeah. 100%. I mean,
Anything
why
that
not?
moves, really, anything that moves could do it if Wayne Brown can do it.
There might be some change in Auckland. There might be some light rail, whatever, that's been spoken
It
of for
would
a
be
long time.
hilarious. It would be
Yeah.
hilarious because you would have like this 25-year-old brown queer immigrant running against this 83 or 85-year-old white cishet guy. It would be just the most hilarious, I think, competition.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be pretty epic because you'll see what Auckland is like, right? The voices will be really interesting. Why not, right? But that's fun. I love. I mean, you have. I mean, first of all, the your master's thesis idea is really fantastic, and I'm sure that will uncover so much for so many young Maori, but also for people that didn't really see that perspective again. If you get well, if such when you get to that stage, but before that, hey, you might end up becoming mayor and it'll be too busy. Like, actually, I'm too busy having a great time here being mayor, and
That's not till
forget about the research.
2025. That's not till
Exactly.
20. We have
Yeah.
2 years to do with the masters.
Yeah, which is cool. I mean, things can change all the time, which is beautiful. Um, I have to ask you a personal question. Your shirt is pretty amazing. I think it's really cool, the shirt that you're
Right?
wearing. Yeah,
It's
that's great.
actually, oh God, I'll show you. It's a Peter Alexander pajamas.
Oh, brilliant. I love it.
I'm talking to you from my bed in pajamas because I went to bed at 5 a.m.
I won't even ask why. I won't even ask why.
At 5 a.m. and I've obviously gotten up and I've eaten and I've done some work, but I haven't actually gotten out of my pajamas because you know what?
Why not?
Changing clothes takes
Yeah,
too
and why not?
glorious.
And why not? I think
I
it's
will change
amazing.
the law of the country, but I won't change my clothes on time.
Hey, as long as you're comfortable, right? Doing that, that's all that matters. That's all that
Yeah.
matters. Shaneel, we've been speaking for about 50 minutes, so which is really we can go into so many different topics. You have done so much in your life, so much so far, and I'm sure there's tons you're going to do. But in the interest of time, and also I know you're a busy person, um, we have a tradition in our podcast. Our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge, and we invite our guests at the end of the podcast to share a piece of knowledge with our guests and ourselves that people can put into their basket as they go forward. So over to you to share. We normally say one or two. You can have three pieces of knowledge in the basket if you have three, or you can go one.
Give you one piece of knowledge, possibly in a form of a convoluted essay.
Go on, give me an essay.
When I was growing up, my parents told me to sit down quietly and keep my head down and to never rock the boat. But when your existence is seen as a wave, it's quite difficult not to rock the boat. So I say to people, do not water yourself down so that you are digestible for conservatives. Let them choke.
Beautiful.
Be
I love
yourself relentlessly, unless you're a bigot, then please stop.
that. Be yourself, but don't be a bigot. Fantastic, fantastic. Which is beautiful, right? And I think a lot of us don't do that. That we don't take time to stop to think about who we actually are versus are we just perceptions of what other people say.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Don't leave it for too long because I left it for 5 years and at 22 I had a crisis.
and then you got a book and like here we go, it's all good, which is fantastic. Do you reckon you have another book in you, Shaneel? Do you reckon now that you've got the writing bug?
Oh God, I've actually been asked. I can't say by who. I can't say
No, that's all right. But yeah,
can't say who's asked me to write another book, but I have been almost been handed a deal. I think writing a book isn't the difficult part. It is the gruesome process of selling it. My book has done better than we expected it to do, so that's great news for me. But it is
yeah.
still such a difficult task to, get up there and convince people to buy your book. It takes it out of you. So I don't think I have it in me to go through the process of selling the book again, but I
Yeah.
do have it in me to write the book.
I love that because a lot of us have skill sets that we love, but no one teaches how to sell that skill set, or how do we, you could be an amazing author, but if you don't know how to sell it, that's it. No one's going to see your book. Where
Oh yeah.
this is terrible, right?
It's taken me some ridiculous levels of effort to, but truthfully, I think my book's campaign was written for me by the people who decided to attack my book.
Yes. Yeah. Easy. Done for you. Like, thanks, guys. This is great.
Really,
Yeah.
they put the book into the best-selling list. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, people forget that criticizing things actually elevates things. Yeah. If you don't like something, don't say anything. But hey, if you are so against it, but hey, if you say stuff, that's going to go right to the top. The cream's going to float. Shaneel, thank you so much for your time. Any last words from you before we say goodbye?
I just had my last words.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. It's a real pleasure having you on. Tane is really, really apology he can't jump on and send me another message. You're going, oh, I'm so gutted. But for our listeners out there, hopefully you found this podcast episode really interesting. If you have not, please go back and listen because you haven't listened properly. Once again, if you want to find Shaneel's book, go to any good bookstore in New Zealand or online and you'll find it. It is a fantastic read. Or go to a library. It's a fantastic read. And it's also something that I think, if you want to gift it to a young person to have a read, there's so much in there that a young person or a person that wants inspiration or wants to see, hey, the world from a different perspective is great. So, yeah, I'm my intention was to come on to talk about to sell the book, but I think it's a great book for other people to have a listen to. Thank you, Shaneel. Thank you for your time. Take care. We look forward to hearing how those law results go. I'm sure you'll be fine. And those mayoral results. Till next time, ka kite. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Good end. Let's stop the.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.